Men in Black or whatever. And I know people laugh about it because about the movies, but the Men in Black have been around a long time, and a lot of people have talked about it, whether it was in Pennsylvania or wherever. You know, when these things occur, the troops move in, a wall of, and it happened with that village in 2010 in China. It was reported on their national government radio, communist radio, and then the government moves in, and all of a sudden it's a non-event. No one talks about it anymore. There's no more information on it. There's a complete clampdown. We expect that from a Chinese government. We don't expect it from our own, but it appears to happen. How many times has the government changed its story about Roswell?
Yeah.
I mean, first it was just it was a flying disc, then it was a hot air balloon, then it was a hot air, the secret hot air balloon, and then it was a hot air balloon with dummies. And I mean, they keep changing the story to try to fit what everyone's realizing are the facts. But the end result is, and then you have them screaming hoax, 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 hoax. No matter what people see, no matter what they photograph, hoax. And it works very well because the main reason is we don't want to believe it's true. We would rather hope it's a hoax. We see strange lights in the sky all the time right now. We get photos of countless UFOs right now. Hoaxes, touched up, photoshopped. Hoax. You hear it over and over and over again. And yet the level of hoaxes, and there are hoaxes, absolutely, which further confounds the situation. Government disinformation, government clampdowns, government crying hoax. It works.
I think you're so right. It's called brainwashing, and that's what we are brainwashed. I think we're in the situation where the government just can't come out, Rob, and say, look, there is a lot of UFO activity. Our military can't do anything about it. It's as simple as that. And, we can't really protect you as a citizen if anything ever happened. I mean, they're not protecting us because evidently people are disappearing. So your local law enforcement can't help you. The FBI can't help you. U.S. Marshals can't help you. And certainly the military can't help you from that. And again...
you're basically on your own. And we don't want to hear that. That's scary. People don't like to be scared. Oh, in movies... as for fun or entertainment, but not in real life. And by the way, you said the government can't. The big question now is can't or won't. Is our government just powerless in the face of all of this, which I hope is more the case than the government won't help us because they have a vested interest in it. That's the really scary part. It's bad enough that we may be at the beck and call and the whim of if you want to call them evil extraterrestrials. But what if our government is actually involved in it, is actually getting something out of it, or is in collusion somehow? That's even scarier because then our own government is against us as well. And then what do you do?
Well, I don't know. I mean, Mary Joyce swears up and down with her couple high up connections that were in the government. Right in the state where you're at, there's an underground military base. And supposedly that they have alien working in that base, supposedly sharing technology with us. And she claims, again, that these aliens that are giving us technology are not like an alien you want to meet. Because if they met you on a back road, well, that's the end of it. You're gone.
Right, and you're talking about the hidden base in Dulce, New Mexico. Well, apparently something really bad went down there with the aliens underground. So, yeah, and so if our government is in collusion with them, if our government is getting technology from them, and there is some circumstantial evidence to that effect because God knows our technology has exploded in the last 50 years or so. And, incredibly so, where they're talking about a technological singularity occurring here in just a few years, then where does that technology come from? Is it just a natural evolution where it just took off and became an exponential increase, or is there something behind it? So if our government's in collusion with them, and there's even some evidence for that. At Edwards Air Force Base, there was supposedly a film of a UFO landing. There was talk of some type of treaty with them. And there was talk of the treaty being violated. It just goes on. And how do you separate the wheat from the chaff? And I think the only way you can do this is get down to the basics. Start exploring. If someone's claiming there's an underground military base here in North Carolina somewhere, give me some coordinates. Let me, we need to start investigating this stuff.
Get a hold of Mary Joyce. It's called SkyshipsOverCashiers.com. And you need to get a hold of her, say that you're my friend, and I'm sure she'll share that information with you. She is very credible.
I'm not sure I want the information because I don't want to go to that base. I mean, I love researching this, but I don't want to die, And people do. They do all the time when they get involved in this stuff. Journalists die, microbiologists die, scientists die, researchers die. It's been going on since the 1950s. There have been clusters of scientists and researchers and UFO researchers and journalists dying. I mean, this is not the safest field to be researching, to be honest with you.
Well, it's even funny doing a talk show, and I have to be honest with you, the last couple months, 3 out of 5 nights or 4 out of 5 nights, we're talking about abductions, UFOs. I'm bringing in the top guest in that, area. And I tell you what, depending on the guest, right, James, we get some strange things that go on in the show, which is only happens when we have certain guests on, which really I find strange and puzzling.
Well, again,
you should mention that because the last few shows I've done, there have been some really weird glitches where I've just been cut off and they had to recontact me. Where the last show I did, there was strange squealing noises, and we had to disconnect and reconnect. They didn't hear it on their end, but I was getting these high-pitched squeals coming through the headphones that actually was painful. And I just told them, I can't hear you. All I hear are these squeals and squeaks. And they said, well, we can hear you. I said, well, I don't know what's going on, but we had to break the connection and reestablish connections. This has happened in my last 3 shows, something like this. I don't know what's going on.
It's strange because I used to have a friend that was with the DOD, and he was with them like 13 years, and he told me that the government has this huge building, and they monitor the internet. They monitor your emails. They monitor the news. They monitor radio shows. There's keywords, but not just that. If somebody is a ufologist, for example, and is maybe talking too much, they get labeled. So they keep an eye on them. So everybody they talk to, guess what? Now becomes on the list. So then when they talk to other people, they get on a list. And he said that is real. I don't know, James, if you remember going back that far up when he was on the show, but that's what he told me, and I believe the guy. Because I even heard the same thing from my friend Art Bell when he was alive. We were talking about it one night on a conversation we had after he was off air. He said the same thing, that once somebody gets on the list, you get on that list, because if you talk to them.
Absolutely, and I do remember that far back. And also to go along with that kind of correlation with all this, there's been other guests that you've had on that while they were on reporting that black helicopters and these barns aren't really barns, and next thing you know, you're having interference and the helicopters, while he's talking to you, are above his house. And then we have other people that mysteriously have implants, and they call in on landline cell phones, and right when you get to certain buzzwords or the same kind of topic that we want to get out there, boom, you can't hear them. All these things are going on, so is it being coordinated by our government, by aliens, or both?
Well, all I can say is I had one guest, Rob, that found a underground base in Texas. It was on a farm. And he went on to my show. He told me where it was at. I didn't say where it was at, but we talked about it. Now, during the break, he went out on his back porch to smoke. And he said there was a black helicopter with no markings. And he took a picture of it, and he sent it over to me. And I'm going, ooh.
I've seen black helicopters. I saw them in Arizona. In fact, I had just done some research on it and was joking with my stepfather. We were driving along, and some helicopters appeared on the horizon to our right. I was the passenger in the pickup. And I jokingly said, oh, look, black helicopters. And they did look black at the distance because of the way the sun was shining. But we didn't take it seriously. But they kept getting closer and closer, and finally passed right overhead. They were black, and they had absolutely no markings on them. I had ample time. It took them about 10 minutes, all told, to pass overhead, and then even as they passed on by, I could see them. There were no numbers. There were no markings. They were black. Do we have secret military bases underground? Absolutely. We know we do. The government has kind of admitted to it. We've had them for decades and decades. At Cheyenne Mountain, for instance, that sort of thing. So we know that the government has underground bases. Number one. Number two, strange stuff does happen on these shows. Does the government monitor the internet and phone calls? You bet they do. That's not a conspiracy theory. The government's admitted it, but it's for our benefit. It's under the I can't think of the act, but it's you sign papers even when you buy a house that refer to the Protection Act of the United States, Homeland, that sort of thing. But sure, they're monitoring stuff. They have to. They have huge communication centers. They're not there just for show. They're using them. There's no doubt. That's not a conspiracy theory. How far they're monitoring us, and when you're talking about lists, yes, I think they do keep lists. They keep lists of terrorists, and they might be keeping lists of other people, too. Now, that part is probably a supposition on my part, but I think it's a reasonable one.
Well, that's what I was told by somebody with a DOD, and I trusted what he said. But, yeah, I was going to say that guy who saw that on my show went on to the biggest radio show in the country 2 nights later, and he sends me a message. And again, he's during the break, and he sends a picture of another helicopter, okay, just hovering over his house during the break. Because I think what happens is if you go onto a certain subject, it alerts them, and that's when they scramble people's phones. You were talking like, James, like Timothy Cullen.
Yeah.
Every time he gets on the show and we start talking about certain subjects about his implant, all of a sudden his phone doesn't work. He has a landline, cell phone, we going back and forth like crazy. And we couldn't even carry a conversation the last time. But you know what? You talk to him afterwards, there's no problem.
Right, and that's the strange part. And that's what's happened to me on the last couple of shows I was on. I had to switch over to my cell phone. My landline became completely dysfunctional. Another show I was on Skype. That's when I got the squeals and squeaks on my end, but not theirs. It worked fine before. It worked fine right after. This morning I went on my walk, as I usually do every day, my 2-mile walk. There was a helicopter in the distance. We're not under any flight plan, and yet I've been seeing helicopters buzzing over here so loud the house shakes for the last week. Why? I don't know, because we're not near a military base. We're not under a flight path for helicopters of any sort. Yet all of a sudden, the last week, you can't get away from the darn things.
That was maybe because what you've been talking about. Hey, our time is virtually up. Where can they find your latest books? What is your latest book? And, if you have a website, please give all that out.
Sure. My website that I use is robshelsky.blogspot.com. You can find a lot of information there. I normally just tell people to Google me with my last name. It all comes up. Or go to Amazon, and you can get all my books there, print, Kindle. Or you can go through Permuted Press, or you can go through Simon & Schuster, or any of these places to get my books. It's, just Google me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, again, maybe down the road, about a month or so, we can get you back on. We can do updates and stuff like that. I tell you, every time you're on, I'll tell you what, certain guests I have on, my numbers go way up high. You're one of them, by the way.
Now, you telling me the truth, because that sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I didn't ask for a check, did I?
Nope.
So,
that's good. I'm glad to hear that my numbers do go up. Your numbers go up because it means they're interested in me as well. So my main reason to be on the show is really, besides promoting my books, of course, is to try to disseminate more information, to get more information. We need to know more about this.
We do, and that's the whole point. And you know what? I'll say this, and I got to let you go. It seems right now on my show, I've been making an effort to cover UFOs, aliens, and abductions more than most of the other shows do. I mean, like I said, 3-4 nights a week, that's what we talk about. And I think that's why my listenership has gone way up, because people want to know what's going on, and we're trying to give them answers.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. People want to know. I want to know. We want answers.
Well, I want to make sure I go to bed at night and I wake up and